every building has a soul. If you don't put the soul, the building is going to die.
What about something like the Bhendi Bazaar project?
It was about 16.5 acres. It had 3,500 families nearly. Buildings were in dilapidated conditions. People were staying in small houses, which were 150 square feet to 200 square feet. The catch was, how do you get the vibrancy back into that place? So we made the project very sensitive to the community. We made it very sensitive to the people. We made it very sensitive to the shop owners whose businesses was depending on how I was going to plan these shops. Without emotions, architecture doesn't happen. End of the day, it is because of your emotion that you're designing. If you don't have emotions, you can't design.
You've done a lot of work with the Bohra community.
So it's very sensitive because you have to understand the lifestyle of the people. You have to understand how they live. And that's how we created small houses with a lot of privacy. It went with the standards of what they were living with and how it uplifted their whole lifestyle.
So how would one go about creating more green spaces or public spaces in a place like Mumbai, for example?
I think Mumbai was already set in a tone in the early times when you had, the Cross Maidan and the Azad Maidan, and you had the Oval Maidan, Parsi Gymkhana and the Hindu Gymkhana. One good example is this coastal road and the promenade next to the coastal road.
Yeah.
Brilliant thing. You can just see now how much difference it's made. For a long walk, people are cycling, kids are playing. So I think 5 years down the line, I see a lot of change.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a unique city.
Welcome to Humans of Bombay, Qutub. Actually, you can welcome us to your office,
Thank you.
which is beautiful.
Welcome all. You're at MQA.
Yeah.
This is the architecture office here at Mahalakshmi. And this is the kind of space that we talk of when we talk of architecture.
It's beautiful. Thank you for having us. You also have a very strong work ethic, right? You've mentioned that you were very young when you started working with your father at his shop. What did that experience teach you about, building something?
Traditionally in our families, boys, once they start growing up, they're put to work on the shop because most of us traditionally had shops as businesses and they were retail businesses. So every Saturday, every vacation, I was put on the shop to work with my dad. My dad was very hardworking, very honest. There was a lot to learn at that age. It was to see how a person could sit from morning to evening on a shop and work, the patience, the way he used to explain the customers, the way he used to work with honesty. So at that age, to see all this and, make it a part of your system was a very big thing. And I'm very thankful to him that, at that age, he made me go through this and he kind of seasoned me before I went and explored the world outside.
What were you doing at the shop, if you don't mind me asking?
So the shop was, it was a stationery shop and we all had to be there. And it was in heart of Mumbai in Abdurrahman Street. So there were customers walking in, walking out. It was a small shop. So we all had to be there and we had to do all the sales which was there. So, it was, and those days there was no MRP. So you had to remember all the sale prices and cost prices of all the hundreds of items which were there inside that shop. So you were getting trained in an overall way, You were you were selling something. I was convincing someone that this is the better thing to buy. And so the journey started from there. From morning to evening in vacations, I used to be there. And on Saturdays, I used to go there after I finished my school studies, post lunch, and I spent time in the shop.
And moving from there to architecture, which is such a different world. The principles remain the same, but just in terms of creativity, right?
Big difference, big difference. So that's why when I started my journey into architecture, I thought it was very important that to take practical experience because I didn't have a legacy where I was going to sit in an architecture firm.
Yeah.
And there was no one in the family who had done architecture. So I was lucky and that the college was from 7:30 to 1:30. And post that, I started working in a leading architect firm in Mumbai. So from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I used to kind of work all the days. And vacations, I used to work full time there. It was only during submissions or something like that that, we used to take a leave and not go to office. But that was a very good thing to happen because while we were studying in college, parallelly we were taking I was taking a practical experience in an office, which was there.
So, for those who are watching and wondering, what does it truly take to be an architect? How does it work?
You have to be, you know, you have to have the passion for it. It's a hard field for sure. It's not something which you do today and it comes up today.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of patience. You need perseverance. You need to be convincing to your own self before you're convincing someone else. So you have to be convinced of what you are doing. You have to be sure of what you're doing. You have to be sensitive to what you're creating. And then when you do that, so it's a very interesting field. It's a field where every time you sit on a new project, you have a plain canvas to you.
Yeah.
So every project you can make it different. Every project you can give a different identity. So it's the most beautiful profession that one can have.
So, what does it take to balance the emotions with the practical side of I just need to get my job done?
Well, it's never that way. There is always architecture is something user centric. It's always sensitive. So you can't have just getting a job done. You know, like very interesting example. I did a school in Bhopal and I got a call saying, "You want a school to be done." That was about 2 decades back. And I said, "Okay, send me the site." I said, "Bought land hai, ab building bana ke bech do." I said, "It doesn't happen that way." He said, "No, no, ab building bana ke bech do and tell us what is the fee." I said, "No, I want to come to site. I will see the site and then I will design the building." When I went to site, it was a valley of 30 acres.
Oh my God.
I said, "यहाँ कैसे building बनाए?" So we made like different classrooms blocks which are coming out all different levels.
Oh, really?
So it is never a job done till you don't put that emotional part into the project.
Yeah.
End of the day, every building has a soul.
Hmm.
If you don't put the soul, the building is going to die.
Yeah.
So we always say buildings are also like human. They are sensitive, they have a soul to it.
What about something like the Bhendi Bazaar project, which you held? Was that complicated? How did that play out?
Obviously, it was complicated, very complicated. There was no precedent first. For sure, there were a lot of issues. It was a large project, very high density.
For those watching, can you explain what the project is?
It was about 16 and a half acres.
Okay.
And it had 3,500 families nearly to be rehoused, about 1,250 commercials to be rehoused in that. And it had very small, narrow streets. It had shopping. It had that old concept where you had shops down and residences on top. Buildings were in dilapidated conditions. People were staying in small houses, which were 150 square feet to 200 square feet, most of them. And surprisingly, in these houses, there were three generations staying. There was a husband, wife, mother, father, and a kid. And when we went there, we saw people having a curtain. In the night, they used to just draw the curtain to sleep. It was something which also took me back to, where my childhood was spent. And when he saw that and he saw the condition of people staying there, it was a need of the hour to do something different for them. And that's how the whole project started. And we started with the overall master plan. The catch was, how do you get the vibrancy back? Bhendi Bazaar had a lot of eateries, it had a lot of vibrancy. People from around Mumbai went there during Ramzan and those kind of times to enjoy the eatery. So the one big catch was, how do you get the vibrancy back? Second was, how do you give, houses which are again going to be emotionally attached to people there? Because people were attached to the house, whatever it was, whether it was dilapidated, whether it was old, whether it was broken. So you had to do something which people got attached to it. So we had a very inclusive policy. When we did the plans also, we took the opinion of the people out there and then we did the project. So we made the project very sensitive to the community. We made it very sensitive to the people. We made it very sensitive to the shop owners whose businesses was depending on how I was going to plan these shops and the overall master plan.
How long did it take?
It's taking a very long time. We started in 2008 on our work. The work on site started in 2014 and still it is going on.
When do you see that it'll complete?
Well, in another 2 years, we'll be able to give all the people their houses back, and maybe another extended 1 year, most of the shops will be given back to the people.
You've done a lot of work with the Bohra community. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you're using or implementing architecture for social cohesion of sorts?
So whenever there is any architecture project is a cohesion project.
Yeah.
When I do a school also, it's a cohesion. And especially when I'm doing community, it is always going to be a big cohesion, which
Yeah.
is there. So it's very sensitive because you have to understand the lifestyle of the people. You have to understand how they live. And that's how we created small houses with a lot of privacy so that, it went with the standards of what they were living with and how it uplifted their whole lifestyle, which was there. So it was a project where we saw how families stayed. We studied what happens and then what was required for those people. And that is how we went across and what we did for them. We worked on the project in a very different way, in a more inclusive way, rather than this, to make it a cohesive project for the people and for the community.
Is that why you say MQA is an emotional architecture firm?
Without emotions, architecture doesn't happen. End of the day, it is because of your emotion that you're designing. If you don't have emotions, you can't design. So every line has a meaning, and if the line is not connected to you, then what are you designing? So when you design a 350 square feet or a 375 square feet house also, you're putting emotions, you're putting sensitivity. How are people going to stay? How are people going to live? How are people going to sleep? What is the privacy? When you're designing a school, you're not designing for the teachers or the parents. You're looking at a 2.5, 3 feet toddler and seeing what that child sees.
Yeah.
Would a child want to go in a 4-story building with columns and pediments out there, which is like a jail? Or a child wants to go in a classroom which opens out into a garden? When you look at a hospital, what do you see? Do you design a hospital for doctors or relatives? No. You design a hospital for the patient. So I met with an accident in 93 when I was caught to Hinduja and I had most of my bones broken. And when I entered, I saw the crowd,
Yeah.
and the crowd hurt me.
What do you mean by it hurt?
It hurts. When you're not well, everything hurts. So you have to think what a patient is thinking. So in a hospital, when a patient is being taken on a stretcher, does the tile on the floor hurt the patient? We never think about it. Then the patient is in the room, and does the patient see some greenery outside? So how does biophilic architecture play an important role in those things? So everything is connected to emotions.
Yeah. You're basically thinking from the other person's shoes and what would give them the most amount of comfort.
Yeah, how architecture helps the user. So it becomes user-centric.
Yeah.
Think of a doctor who's sitting in an OT and doing a long time operation. If you give him a window, what happens?
Yeah.
There is hope. He's seeing a leaf, he's seeing a bird, he's fighting. So sensitivity, emotions, if you're not able to capture, I'm not adding a soul to the building.
So what do you do differently with your hospitals, for example?
So we do it like this. We don't make it just a place which is for people to just come. And a simple example, if you go to a normal OPDs, you would see the waiting area in the center and all the OPDs around it, with no natural light, nothing. Now you think of a patient. Why is a patient there? The patient is there to listen to the doctor that all is well with me. So the patient is continuously looking at the door of the doctor she has to meet. The anxiety and the stress at that level is so high, waiting for your number to be called in. But if that waiting is something like this, where you're sitting, where there's natural light, there's plants, there is some program going on TV, and the OPDs are on the side, where you're not even looking which is the door you have to open and go inside. Does that make it different? They are very small things. Designing for human behavior is something we've all been taught about.
Yeah.
And this is what we are talking about.
Give me another example of something unique that you designed for a home basis a requirement or an office that kept the user in the center.
So this is the office.
Yeah.
There are a number of offices in this building. Everyone is coming here to see this space.
Really?
Someone told me we all shifted from the old building. And one lady came and said, I'm going to come and have coffee here every day. And I'm going to pick up a book and sit and read. So if you are able to make it sensitive to people, then people want to be there. We made a school in Aurangabad, and how the school was merging with the landscape. And I saw children when I went there, they were picking up caterpillars, they were picking up small insects. They were seeing a whole cycle of that ovulation of the plants. They were seeing different times, different seasons, different colors of plants. So you don't only learn inside the school, you learn outside the school also. So when you do design houses also, it is that way. So as I gave you an example of this 375 square feet house. So if you have 2, 3 generations staying there, would you design a living, dining, kitchen, bedroom? No. So we had a kitchen and then we had 2 rooms with 2 attached bathrooms. And morning in the daytime, both were living spaces.
The bedrooms.
The rooms.
Right.
And in the night time, both the multi-purpose rooms were the sleeping space. And both had their own privacy. Both had their natural light and ventilation. They didn't need any curtain in between. And they had their privacy because the kitchen was in the center. So when you talk about large homes, there are a lot of ways of doing it. But when you start looking at small things, that is where the real hard work and real thought has to be gone in. That how is it going to sustain time? How is it going to be sustainable for a long period? Today, the word sustainability is more of ticking boxes, that what are the glasses and what are the. But for me, these are the factors of sustainability. That if a project lives its time, and when you go after years and you see the project and it is still like that, then that project is sustainable. So I went to a school which I had done in 2005, which was a 30-acre valley, and it's still the same. So I'm doing one more sports block there, and it was brilliant. Or I went to a corporate office, which I did again 25 years back. And I said, you guys have not painted? He said, so we painted. But the chairman said that the colors are going to be the same, what is going to be original. So when you do something which is connected to the user, which has emotions, which has sensitivity, it is not going to die down. It's going to live.
So if you had to break down the steps of what typically happens when you receive a brief to the completion, can you walk our viewers through the bullet points?
Yeah. So in India, it's a little different. When we get the brief is the first brief that we get. Okay. But that's not the final brief.
Okay.
So that's a thought which they put. Then when we put a brief on the paper and we present, I call it as a first concept. When we present the first concept, then everything starts. Then the mind starts opening up. That, oh, in this, the client also starts thinking that in this, more than this can be done. So then the second brief comes in. And then the actual concept starts. Then once the concept is done, goes back and forth couple of times in that also. After that, we move to what we call as schematic drawings. So consultants come in, all the other agencies like structure, MP, everyone works in. And then everyone starts working on the project to it. So then we start doing what is called a schematic. These are very technical terms. Then we go to something like design development. And then after that, we issue drawings on site to be constructed. So it is a very systematic process that it goes in. So there's a lot of coordination, while this is what you're seeing, but there's someone who has worked on the lighting, someone who has worked on the firefighting, someone who has worked on the air conditioning, So there are different people who are also associated on the project which is there. So as an architect, you have to take it wholesome, you have to take them into your part. And then once you have taken them, then the holistic part comes together. So after the first concept to the site, there is a whole journey which happens. And then when it goes on site, then it is a normal construction and there's periodical supervision till the completion.
To completion. Got it. So how many projects would MQA have completely and successfully delivered?
I don't know. I've never counted. When you ask me today also how many projects I have, I don't know.
You have no idea. Do you have a ballpark of how many in a year that you do?
No, nothing. We just work. We just work. What goes on, we goes on. It just keeps on moving.
What is one of the most special projects that you've designed?
Many projects we have designed. Another one there is a commercial. We did a corporate office in Andheri. It is very beautiful. It's a semi-government job, but it has a beautiful atrium in the center and it had 2 wings which are on the 2 sides. So that is very interesting project to do, and especially when you're doing it in Mumbai, something like this. We have done a beautiful school for Bohra in Aurangabad. It was nominated in the 20 top schools in the world. It is very child centric, and it was something which made out of exposed concrete, and it was just ground plus one. It was just to the scale of the children, and it was something where children wanted to be in. So number of projects we do, but every project we do is quite user centric and different from the other.
What about the most expensive project that you've done? What does that look like?
So expensive, we do some very nice houses in Ahmedabad, and they are very expensive. So we have done houses which are nearly 40,000 square feet also,
Wow.
bungalows. So we
What
were,
goes into 40,000 square feet?
it varies, there is a lot of public space, in the sense entertainment spaces, in-house gym and in-house spa, and everything also comes inside. But when we do that also, we come back to a scale. So one is, you have a large formal dining, a formal living, you have the formal areas which are there. Then you have all these entertainment areas. Then you have your sports and spa areas. So those are the, and then within that house, we create another house inside that, and
It's more private.
more private.
Yeah.
So that is your day-to-day house. That might be 5,000, 6,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet, which is your living house. But everything is still intermingled with one another, interconnected. So you're every day experiencing the overall space, but you're living in a very cozy area.
So, I mean, like you said, the Mumbai skyline is evolving. If you had a clean canvas, what would you do? Like, if you could paint a picture and say these are the different things, and it's not just limited to buildings; it can be anything.
Yeah, for sure. I think Mumbai was already set in a tone in the early times, when you had, the Cross Maidan and the Azad Maidan, and you had the Oval Maidans, and you had the uh, Parsi Gymkhana and the Hindu Gymkhana. So I think one of the biggest things, and the race course obviously is there. I think somewhere that model should have been kind of done in some scales at different places as you moved up towards the north. So the first thing I would we do is to create how these public spaces came out. So today, if you go to those maidans on a Saturday or a Sunday, you see them filled with
Yeah.
children playing.
Yeah.
On an island city, that is what people want. So what people want, they want space, and how you generate space. And then second is the streets. You walk, you go to any city, you will not remember the buildings in Manhattan, or you will not remember the buildings in Chicago, or you will not remember the buildings in Europe, but you will never forget the streets. You will say, oh, I walked on this street and this street was so beautiful. So the memory people take back are these. They are not the buildings. Buildings are the user part of it. But when we talk about the streets, we talk about the eyes on the streets, we talk about the green spaces, the open spaces. That is what, would be the basic to start. And then around that, you work around. And that gives you, like today, if you talk of New York, you talk of Central Park as the identity. You don't talk about Empire State as the identity. So if the canvas had to be painted, obviously, the first thing that would start was, how do you create space for people?
Yeah. So, how would one go about creating more green spaces or public spaces in a place like Mumbai, for example?
So one good example is this coastal road
Yeah.
and the promenade next to the coastal road.
Yeah.
Brilliant thing. You can just see now how much difference it's made. You got a long walk, people
Yeah.
are cycling,
Yeah.
kids are playing,
It's packed.
packed.
It's packed. Yeah.
So any space, there is a lot of opportunity for these things. You can have cumulative green spaces combining together to form these open gardens, open play areas. So there is tremendous opportunities, which are there.
How do you look at Bombay's development? Because, like you said, it's changed. The coastal road is obviously like a game changer. But what would you maybe?
Luckily, the government is doing the right job. It's doing what it was lacking, and what was lacking was infrastructure. We are waiting. We are waiting for the 13 metros to start.
Yeah.
We are waiting for the final coastal road to come in.
Yeah.
If all the traffic from outside goes, so any other city that you see, a normal city, in a normal city where there is a lot of land around, they make what is known as a ring road. So you go to Ahmedabad, you go to these places, they will be having a ring road around
Yeah.
it, because they have land to expand. In Mumbai, there is no land to expand. So we don't have a ring road. So we had linear roads. Now all our traffic which went from south to north had to pass through the same roads. So now we are creating a ring in the water. And we are creating a ring through the freeway, eventually. So that is going to be your eventual ring road which is going to get formed. And from there you can enter in from different places.
Yeah.
So once you do that, all your major traffic goes out. So if I want to go to Vasai Virar, I don't need to pass through all this. I just take from Nariman Point, I take the coastal road, I go out, I connect to Bandra, the coastal road, I connect
You don't actually come into
into city. You just move out. So the inside becomes only the density for the people staying in there or people who want to enter into that area. So I think 5 years down the line, I see a lot of change.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a unique city. We are not doing the replica of any other city. This will have its own identity because of its geographical status that it has. And it's going to be beautiful. And then once you have the number of metros running, we in Mumbai were always used to public transport, whether it was a BST bus or it was a local train. So for us, it is never so difficult to walk to a station and take a train. So I think it's going to be a game changer.
Do you think we can ever be like a global city where there's a lot of walking?
That's what I said, that what we need is streets.
Streets, yeah.
I exactly said that.
Yeah.
So luckily in this Bhendi Bazaar project, that's what we did. We had wider roads, but on the wider roads, we kept the traffic carriageway very little, what was required. But we are making 3 meter pedestrian walkings because that has to enhance the shop and that is to create space. So what we need is walking streets. We need streets to walk. The metro is coming, your coastal road is coming. Now the next thing you need is just streets because that is going to give you the identity.
But it's possible to do once the street has already been constructed. Like how will that be redesigned?
Tough, but if something can be done and something can be worked on, I think that's great. Like today also you go to Colaba, you see everyone walking. You see, you go to Linking Road, you see where. So the shopping gets enhanced because of the streets and the pedestrian. In the olden times, you walk from VT station to Fountain and you had the colonnade walkings which were there.
Yeah.
And people walked on that. People got down at VT station, walked right up to Fountain to their workspace. So in Mumbai, walking has never been a issue because we have a tropical climate. It's not very hot. It's not very cold. It's just the 3 months of monsoon that people are a little, it's a little here there. Otherwise, it's very comfortable to walk on the streets.
What are you excited about from a MQA perspective going forward? Any projects, fun projects that you're working on right now?
A number of projects we are working on. We are always excited. So the principle is that whatever you do, you have to be excited for that. So we are doing tall buildings which are coming up, which are 300 meters.
Okay.
And we want to see how it happens. We want to go on the terrace and see what it is to experience that also.
How tall is 300 meters for people's context? How tall would that
It
be?
is 70 stories.
70 stories.
Yeah. Then we are doing a beautiful hospital in Pune. So we want to see how that comes up, Then we are working on another school in Indore. So we want to see how that comes up. So we have varied projects that we are doing on, We are working on a resort somewhere. So we want to see how that comes up. So, as I said, that every time you sit on the canvas, it's a new opportunity.
And it's an exciting one.
It's an exciting because it's a blank canvas.
Yeah. So can you walk us through a little bit of the math of typically how lucrative being an architect is or running an architecture firm is?
So when the firm is small, it is more lucrative. But as the firm grows big, everything starts growing big. Because of the competition, your rates really don't fly differently. So you have to understand that, while you're building your image, you're making certain compromises on the street. So I'm not saying that there's no profit. The profits are there. But, number-wise, if you start looking at, around 25-30% is what is there, which is there. You have to keep working hard for that, There is no second to it, you just keep moving. It's an everyday cycle. So you keep working, you get more projects, you work hard and try. And how efficiently can you do it, time-wise? Because the faster you can do, the faster you can collect your payments and the faster you can make more money and increase your profit margins.
Do you think AI will play a role in disrupting not only just the way the actual execution happens, but to shorten the time frame, perhaps?
I wouldn't use the word disruption. I think I would say everything is most welcome. So anything that comes in new, you have to look how it helps you. So I look at AI pre-design and post-design. So when I say pre-design is when I say that to collect information, I would use AI. I would want, if a site is in some place, I would want all the information. So AI helps me to get all the basic, which would have taken me days. It comes here in hours,
Yeah.
for me. So you use it effectively. Now, when it comes to architecture, designing, sensitivity, emotions, that is all you. So there AI doesn't play the role. But then once that is done, then you come to the next phase. I want to present the drawings to you. I want to present the things.
And that happens with the
It's a
human.
mechanical
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So now there, if a person is doing it, it might take 2 days. But if AI is doing it, it will take 2 hours. So you use AI effectively to what you want, to your advantage. So it is not disruptive. It is something which is acceptable.
So let me ask you this question. For those living in very compact homes, like in Bombay, most homes are compact, right? Don't have acres of land as in other parts of India. What are 2 or 3 simple hacks that people can do to make the spaces more intimate but also seem bigger?
So way back in 1998, 99, I had written an article on Times of India. And I was in a house which was 430 square feet.
Yeah.
We, husband, wife, and 2 kids were there. And that house was published in a magazine, Times of India Property Times. So again, the bigger thing is space. How you enhance space. You don't need big spaces. In small spaces also, how you carve out spaces for people. And first, put the functional things in such a way that the space gets some meaning. Then you use the decor part of it. Now, the simpler you can keep, the better it is. The cleaner you can keep, the better it is. So if things are very simple, very clean, and very neutral colors, even the walls are very neutral colors, then automatically you will have enhancement of space. And if functions are properly aligned, then you won't have things which are destructive. So you will feel, so I had like 2 sofa combos, which in the day were the sofas, and night my children used to sleep. I had a dining table which was 4 feet, which is good enough for 4 of us to sit and dine. But in that 400 and odd square feet, I had everything which was places, and it never felt cluttered. I use a very light color veneer because I didn't want to have a dark color to kind of reduce the space. I just plain, clean white walls with some color thrown around here or there, and that's it. And I just one neutral color flooring which ran throughout the house. So when it runs throughout the house in neutral flooring, it enhances space. You see space connected from one area to the other. So you feel, the sense of space, which is it. So space is the biggest thing. So how you work on a 400 square feet house, or how you work on a 300 square feet house, or how you work on a 3,000 square feet house. In Mumbai, space is money.
Thank you so much, Qutub. It's been lovely having this chat with you. And I hope
Same.
people get a understanding of what it truly takes. I did. And I'm still thinking about that school with classrooms at different levels. So thank you so much for the
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
And we are most happy to have you here. And it was very nice talking to you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.